Hey everybody, this is Edward Underhill, and I'm here with my review for you guys of AEW All Out 2021. I just got done watching it a few minutes ago, and overall this pay-per-view was pretty solid. I enjoyed it top to bottom. Some of the matches I thought could have been better, and I'll get to those, but the ending is what I do want to talk about, and we'll get to that. So starting off with the buy-in pre-show, we had a few things, primarily a interview between CM Punk and Jim Ross, which was pretty good, where they talked about CM Punk's return to the ring and everything that led up to it. Then we had, previews for the other matches. Then we also had the 10-man tag team match of the Hardy Family Office and TH2 versus Jurassic Express and Best Friends. Pretty good tag team match, it was your standard 10-man tag team offering for the most part, with guys getting their spots in. But in the end, the Best Friends and Jurassic Express got the win when Jungle Boy made Angelico tap out to the snare trap. And then afterwards, you had a giant brawl with everybody. And at one point, the Hardy Family Office are about to cut Orange Cassidy's hair before a bunch of other teams come out. But that was the 10-man tag team match. Again, it was decent for what it was. Starting off with the main card, we had the TNT Championship match, Eddie Kingston versus Miro. And this was a decent match. You had Eddie Kingston primarily targeting Miro's neck throughout the match, and Miro using his strength and power to kind of wear Eddie Kingston down. It felt like, though, they were performing in second gear as opposed to, say, third or fourth. But, again, it was a decent match for what it was. But in the end, Miro won with a low blow and 2 kicks to the head and a pinfall to get the win. But it was a decent match to start the show off. Next up, we had Jon Moxley versus Satoshi Kojima, which was another decent match. Very stiff, a lot of strikes. At one point, at the beginning of the match, Kojima goes to shake Jon Moxley's hand, and Jon Moxley just shoots him the middle finger, which was a little disrespectful, but it was funny at the same time. But, decent match. Like I said, a lot of strikes, very stiff. But in the end, Moxley wins with 2 Death Riders, or the Paradigm Shift, and then pins him to get the win. And then afterwards, Minoru Sasuke confronts Jon Moxley, and that leads to about a 5 or so minute confrontation between the two, which ends with Moxley getting put to sleep and then getting hit with the Gotch-style pile driver. And I know that they're going to have a match this Wednesday on Dynamite, which they announced later on in the show. Then we had the Women's Championship match, Britt Baker versus Kris Statlander, which was another decent match. I will say this, Britt Baker, she can work. I'm just not the hugest fan of her character, but this was still a pretty solid match. She did hit a Panama Sunrise on Kris Statlander to close out the match, and then pin her with the submit her with the lockjaw, which is kind of an unintentional setup for what we're going to see later on in the show. You also had Orange Cassidy at one point trying to encourage Statlander to get back in the ring when she was down outside the ring, which was cool. But like I said, decent match. Britt Baker won. But continuing on, we had the steel cage match for the AEW World Tag Team Championship. The Young Bucks versus the Lucha Brothers. This was a really good match. Again, at times it was a little bit slow, but it was physical. I do think that their ladder match from the first All Out was slightly better. But it did boil down to the Young Bucks is doing their typical heel shtick. At one point, Brandon Cutler throws a bag into the ring with a boot in it, or actually no, it was a shoe that had thumbtacks glued to the bottom, and the Young Bucks used that to bust open both of the Lucha Bros. And in the end, the Lucha Bros turned the tables on the Young Bucks. They used the thumbtack covered shoe to bust open Nick. And you had Rey Fenix doing the big splash off of the top of the cage. And in the end, the Lucha Bros win the tag team titles when they pinned Nick off of their finisher. And I believe it was Penta picks up the pin to get the tag team titles. But like I said, really solid match. And I am curious to see where this is going to go. Then we had the Women's Casino Battle Royal. I'll post the list of the participants in the description box. For a Battle Royal, this was pretty good. You know, a little bit of a clusterfuck at times. Or a cluster mess, you know, if you're not into cursing. But, you know, you had a pretty good amount of participants in there, but in the end, the Joker, Ruby Soho, won the match when she last eliminated Thunder Rosa, which was a big surprise to me. But I am curious to see where they're going to go with Ruby going forward, if they're going to save her and Britt for Full Gear, which is the next pay-per-view, or for one of the special shows coming up, like the Saturday Night Dynamite or whatever, but we'll see what happens. Then we had the final fight, Chris Jericho versus MJF. And you had MJF doing the fake entrance, paying homage to Jericho's old countdown entrance from his WWE, WWF run, which was just a massive F you to the fans, and there were a number of middle fingers directed at MJF from the crowd, as well as some chants. And then you had Jericho coming out with Billy Gray performing an instrumental version of Judas, which was really cool. But this was a solid match. It was better than what I was expecting, and you could tell that Jericho wanted this to be good. You know, Jericho did a really good job in this match. At one point, Wardlow and Jake Hager come out, but they brawl into the aisleway. But MJF, you know, him being just a sleazy dirtbag heel is just, it's just priceless. I mean, you know, you had him doing all sorts of obscene stuff during this match, including a obscene hand gesture as he was setting Jericho up for a suplex. But in the end, Jericho won with the Walls of Jericho after they restarted the match because his foot was on the rope. But it was a solid match, so I am curious to see where Jericho's going to go from here. I would imagine he'll take some time off after this, but we'll see what happens. And then we come to the match of the night, CM Punk versus Darby Allin. And I'm going to say this right now, this is on my short list for greatest AEW pay-per-view matches of all time. This had a very similar atmosphere to Rock and Hogan from WrestleMania 18. And I know that's sacrilege to say that, but if you watch this and then you watch that match with Rock and Hogan, you'll see what I mean. And I will say this right now, this match was no carry job. CM Punk proved he still had plenty of gas left in his tank, and Darby held up his end of the deal. This was a great match. Started out slow. As it got going, they ramped up the gears a little bit, and it was an excellent match. Great technical wrestling. You had some high spots, counters, not much outside the ring stuff, which I really enjoyed. But in the end, CM Punk won with the GTS and the pinfall on Darby to get his first AEW win. And after the match, you had Sting coming out and him congratulating Punk, and then Punk shaking hands with Darby, which I really liked. But I am very interested in seeing where CM Punk goes from here. And I do think within a year, he will be the champion. Next up, we had Paul White versus QT Marshall. This was relatively short. It was pretty much Paul White just beating the hell out of QT for the most part. The Factory did get involved, which, you know, Paul White dispensed of them. And he ended up winning with the chokeslam to get the win. I would imagine this will probably just be a one-off for the most part, but we'll see what happens. If he's going to continue doing commentary for Dark with Tony Schiavone, that's fine. If he is going to do a match here and there, that's great, but we'll see what happens. And then last but not least, we had the AEW World Heavyweight Championship match, Kenny Omega versus Christian Cage. Second best match of the night for me, behind Punk and Darby. Great technical wrestling match, you know, with their signature stuff. You did have some tables involved in this as well. At one point, Kenny Omega sets up for the goodbye and good night. Christian gives him the middle finger. You also did have some interference from the Good Brothers and Don Callis, but this was primarily just a straight one-on-one match, and in the end, Kenny Omega got the win with a one-winged angel off the top rope and pinned Christian to win the match and retain the championship. And then after the match, the Good Brothers, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, they all beat down on Christian Cage. At one point, Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus come out. They get beaten down. Kenny's shooting on the mic, ripping the crowd. And then we had the debut of Adam effing Cole, baby. So he comes down. They tease him and Kenny having a fight. And then he kicks Jungle Boy's head off. And then he joins the Elite. And then Kenny, you know, he gets back on the mic, starts ripping the crowd. And then he's about to do his customary goodbye and goodnight. And then Bryan Danielson comes out. He makes his AEW debut to a thunderous ovation. He, Christian, and Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy, they stand toe-to-toe with the Elite. They get into a massive brawl. And the show goes off the air with Bryan, the Jurassic Express, and Christian Cage all standing in the middle of the ring celebrating with the audience. But it was a great way to close out the show, and I do think at Full Gear we will see Blood and Guts 2. But we'll see what happens. But overall, I would give this show, for what it was, a 4 out of 5. We had a couple of decent matches. We had a couple of good matches, and we had 2 great matches, and the ending to me was just epic. But let me know what you guys thought of the show if you did see it. If you haven't, definitely order the replay or track it down somewhere. I am going to get the DVD when it comes out. And until then, thank you guys for watching the video, and I will see you guys later.